What's going on? All right, so first, a demonstration of what the functionality of the script is going to be. So we have our shortcut, and we want to find spawn 5. And there it is. You can see that the item's now selected, and the screen moved to it. Well, the screen didn't actually move to it in that instance, so let's do it again. So spawn 5, and there we go. And if we just do spawn, if we're just looking for spawn, it centered around what appears to be this one, but you can see that it highlighted any that match that criteria. Let's actually move all this away from the start so that we can see a bit better. So let's do spawn 2, and there it is, it highlighted that one. Spawn 7, there is no spawn 7. Yeah, maybe in our script we could do an alert for like not found or no match or something. I thought there were. Oh, that's right. Spawn 5, there it is. Cool. All right. Let's get into it. So, actions list. I'm going to delete the one that I just made, and we're going to do a new one. So new action, new Reaper script in our folder. Find item in session. Find item in session by name. I'm so bad at naming these. Why? Yeah, whatever. Find item in session by name. Sure. Cool. All right, so we're used to this by now. Function main. Call the function. All right, so what are we going to do? So part of the functionality of this is, you know, we get a string that we're searching for, and then we have to iterate through every item in the session and check them one by one pretty much until we find a match. So in actuality, the script probably won't go through every single one. It might find one 60% of the way through, and then it moves there, and the script stops and exits early. But to account for the possibility that we iterate through all, so we want to count all the items in the session. Now, just to point out, that's slightly different to what most of the other scripts have done. What most of the other scripts have done is count the selected items. In this one, we don't care so much about the selected items. We are just counting the existing items. So there's a subtle difference there. Not a subtle difference, a big difference, but one that might slip through the cracks. So count all the items in the session and store as a variable. Let's write that and store. And then we want to prompt the user for the desired string. Cool. Then we want to check if the user actually gave a string. Because remember, with those alert boxes that request input, you could just press escape, or you could press enter with it being blank, in which case we don't want to proceed. So if the user pressed escape or enter with an empty string, then we don't want to proceed. I think that's fair. Okay. So if our string is not an empty string, Yeah. Iterate through every item in the session. Bear in mind that there might be a lot. That's something to consider. Reaper can do these sorts of iterations very, very quickly, but so too can our sessions be quite large. So it might be something to bear in mind. Should be fine though. Iterate through every item in the session. So that's a for loop, which we've seen a few times now. First, we want to check for an exact match. And yeah, if it's an exact match, we'll move the screen. Yeah, right. If we find a match, stop iterating through the items, first of all. Set that item to selected so it highlights. Move our timeline view so that the item is roughly centered. Now I say roughly centered because, if the item is at the start of the session, we actually can't center, I don't think, because there's only so far that way you can go. But yeah, we'll try and center it if we can. And if Reaper doesn't let us, then we'll at least be looking at it, right? Yeah. Cool. So that's the end of the first iteration block, right? But if we haven't found an exact match, now look for partial matches. Yeah, look for partial matches. So what I mean by that is in that session behind the script there, there is spawn 8. So if we type, no, a better example. In the session here, there's spawn 1 and also spawn 10, right? So if you search for spawn 1, there'll be a partial match for spawn 10 and an exact match for spawn 1, right? So yeah, we should have hit spawn 1 in this first iteration block, but let's say spawn 1 wasn't on the session, I had deleted it. Then we start looking through for partial matches, and then it'll find spawn 10 because that shares that partial string. That's what I mean by that. And yeah, just on that, yeah, so I'm going to change this actually. If we find a match, stop iterating through the items, because you can have multiple items with the same string, actually, with the same name. So yeah, let's actually not do that. If we find a match, set that item to selected. Yeah, okay, so what we're going to do is set all items that are a match to selected, but we're going to move our timeline view so that's roughly centered on the first exact match that it found. Does that make sense? So it'll highlight all of the exact matches, but it'll move the screen to be looking at that first one that it found. All right, so that's the first iteration block. And then, this second one where we're looping through again, it's basically the same, but this time we're looking for partial matches. Basically the same as above. No, I'm not going to write that. Now look for partial matches. If we find a match, each match that we find, set that item to selected so that it highlights. Move our timeline view to be looking at the first that it found. And then we end. Yeah, cool. So this is a big one. This is quite a big one. This might be 2 videos, just warning you. Okay, let's jump into it. I think that's everything. So first we want to count media items. So not count selected media items, just count media items. That will give you all in the session a number that is all in the session. Local num of items equals, done this before, we want the active project to be stored as a variable rather than just passing in the number 0 because it's not quite as readable. We've done this before as well. We want to prompt for a user input. So that one is get user inputs. Here we go. Right. So local return val and call this string to search for. So the title of the box that comes up, that can be search for. We want one input, and then it's pretty self-explanatory. These can just be empty strings, I think. Let's just have a look at what that looks like. If I press Control S, it should come up. Search for. Yeah, it's pretty uninspiring, isn't it? Maybe type item name to search for. Yeah, whatever. You can think of something better than that. I'll leave that to you. Cool. And one of the things I like to do when the arguments sort of fall off the edge of the screen like that, I like to put it like this. That's perfectly fine to do because remember, the compiler will ignore white spaces and character returns in most circumstances, this being one of them. So yeah, you can do that. Now you can see everything. That's something that I usually do. Okay, so now we want to check if the user actually gave a string. Now there's a few things here. So this get users input, there's like a Boolean success return val, success or failure. So if this is false, that probably implies that they just pressed escape, or they press cancel. That would make this false. So that's one thing that we could check. The other thing to check would be either the existence of this or whether that is an empty string. So I guess the best way to do it would be to check for both of those things. So yeah, let's do that. And we might leave a comment to do this. Check that the user clicked OK as opposed to escape or cancel, right? And then, you know, this one here, check if the user gave a string. Also check that, yeah. So that's what we're gonna do. So how we're gonna do that is if retval and, I don't know if we've used the word and in our scripts yet. I can't remember, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Here we go. This is what we're doing. So let's break down this line. So if return val. So I guess this is kind of shorthand. This is exactly the same as this. So if this is equal to true and the string is, whoops, I did that wrong, is not equal to an empty string. So just to be crystal clear, there's no space in there. That's just open quotation mark, close quotation mark. That's an empty string. That's how you write an empty string. You could also do it with double quotes like that. Your choice. So yeah, that's how you write an empty string. And also this one here, when you do tilde equals, that means not equal to. So if return val is true, and this is not equal to a double string. Now, remember how an if statement works. This whole thing has to be true for the code to then enter the enter inside the if statement, right? And when you have two little mini conditionals separated by the keyword and, what that means is for this whole thing to be true, this has to be true and this has to be true. If one's true and one's false, this whole thing is false. So this needs to be true and this needs to be true. Okay, that's how AND works. Cool. So this is how we check that we're actually searching for something meaningful. Then we don't proceed. Yes. So I'm going to write that comment up here instead. Cool. All right. So let's start looking at these iteration loops. So we want to iterate through all the indices. So from 0 to number of items -1. We've talked about why that is in a few videos now. Yep. So let's copy these comments into here. Cool. Check for an exact match. All right. So we didn't really write how we were going to do all that, did we? So what we need to do is we need to get a reference to the item, get a reference to the active take, get the name of the item. Actually, do we need the take? I can't remember now. Let's have a look. So we're going to jump onto our Reaper API. Get take name. Is that the one that we use? Get take name. Yes. Yes. So yeah. So I suppose an item can have different takes of different names. Actually, I suppose that makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. Whoops. Wrong spot. Here. Cool. So get the name of the take. So that's how we're going to do that. So get a reference to the item, then the active take, then get the name, and then we want to check for an exact match. And then if we find a match, yeah, these comments are a bit all over the place now, aren't they? Yeah, so if we find a match, move the view to focus on that, right? But keep iterating through and set any item that it's a match to selected. because maybe it's not the exact one you were looking for, right? Yeah, cool. All right, let's start moving through these. So get media item. Yep. So this is the correct one to use if you're indexing items by all of the items in the session, which is item index. So that's good. Cool. So local item equals, we want to pass in the active project, and the index will be whatever the iteration value is, which is I at every point. Okay, so then get active take. Get active take. Yep, so you pass in a media item, you get the active take. Nice. That's the one we want. Local take equals, and you pass in the media item. There we go. So this will be take name equals, and you pass in the take. All right, so we're going to check for an exact match only in this iteration. Because remember, we're going to do the same iteration again after this, but this time we'll be looking for partial matches. So exact match is easy. It's just if string to search for is exactly equal to take name. So if you find a match, move the focus to view on that. So that's cool. Let's come back to that actually, but that's, you know, just quickly, that's going to involve, yeah. So get the start position and end position. No, so get the start position and length of this item. We also want the current start and end position of our screen view, of our timeline view, because we're going to use that to make sure we don't zoom in or out when we move. I hate it when that happens with Reaper scripts. So yeah, we're going to get that stuff. Yeah, and then we're going to move the screen to focus on this item without zooming in. Cool. So that's that comment there. But then we're going to keep iterating through. Yeah, okay, cool. So this is what we're going to do. If this item is the first to be found, then do this stuff, right? If this item is not the first to be found, then set this item to selected, right? So we want to select all the items. Yeah, any that we find we want to select. So you actually don't need this check here. It's sufficient just to say set this item to be selected. Cool. All right. So let's come back to this screen stuff here, but let's take care of the set item to selected. Cool. So what is that again? I forget. Set item selected. Set media item selected. There we go. Cool. So we're setting the item, not the take, the item to selected. So we can just pass in true for that one. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, right? Even if you look at that later on, you'll be like, set item to selected true. Yeah, that should selected. Yeah. So that's sufficient to write it like that. Yeah, we're probably at a stage where we could test this thing, I reckon. So we're only checking for exact matches. So let's find a match. So we got spawn 3 up there. So run. Nope. What do we do wrong? So we're missing an end, I believe. So we've got ends there, but we don't have an end for this if statement here. So there we go. All right, so spawn 3. Spawn 3 didn't... Oh wait, hang on. No, it's not selecting it. Now, there's one thing that I think I did something wrong, but there's one thing that I want to do first, and that is update timeline. Yes, so update timeline. So what that does is, for a script like this, the selection won't show until you click away from the script, which is really annoying. But if you call update timeline, then it will show instantly. I don't think that's going to make the script work. Yeah, it's still not selecting that one. So I've done something wrong. I reckon this might be a good chance for you to pause the video, try and figure out what I did wrong. That'd be a good practice for you. If you don't want to do that, don't pause. That's fine. So let's look at what we've done. All right, string to search for. Let's make sure that that is spelt the same as all this stuff. Yeah, that's cool. Take name, get take name. I'm just checking like the arguments are correct and all that stuff, just by clicking on this and reading the top. All right, so one thing that we could do is, you know, that we can have message boxes come up. Show message box, there we go. And this is just a way of like interrupting the script and telling us if we've gotten into a certain situation. For instance, if we put a message box here, if the code gets into this area, it'll tell us about it, which is really cool. Cool. So I'm going to look for spawn 4. You can't see it, but I can see it on my bigger screen. Okay, so this didn't come up, which means we didn't get in here. So let's just check. That's going to do it for every single one. Look for, bear with me for 1 sec. If I equals, I'm just going to do this so that it only does it once. Spawn. So looking for item. All right, so it does enter the for loop. That's good news. So we're doing something wrong though. We definitely get in here. Let's do this. Let's put the message box up here. And one thing that you can do is, instead of, you know, writing the string directly, you can actually put in a variable that is a string into a message box. So we're looking for spawn 4, and yeah, it correctly sees that we're trying to find spawn 4, but then it didn't do anything. If I is 1, then show me. So this will just do it for the first one, because otherwise this message box will come up for like all 40 of them or whatever. Spawn 2.wav. Ah, get out of it. So the item name is spawn 2.wav. Oh, for God's sake. Come on. All right, of course it is. Jesus. Not sure how much of that I'll edit out. It's probably entertaining for you to watch me flounder around there. All right, fine. You bastard. Spawn 4 dot item found. There we go. I was already highlighting it, so that was anticlimactic. Spawn 3 dot wave, and it highlights. Okay. All right, cool. So, you know, the code worked. I was just searching for the wrong thing. So I guess that's cool. So I'm going to comment that out and leave it there because it might be useful as a debugging tool later. But obviously when you comment out a line like that, it takes it out of the compilation, which is cool. All right, so I think we'll come back to this in the next video, but we will focus on the partial matches now. Cool. So this whole chunk here is probably going to start the same because we're going to do a lot of the same things there. But this time we're not looking for a total match. Look for a partial string match. Cool. So the way we do this is not a Reaper function. It is actually a native Lua function. So Lua string dot search. Or is it find? String dot find? String dot find. I thought it was string dot search. Example find hello. String dot find. So that gives the index of it. I guess that can work. I think we can use this. String.find. Cool. So we use string.find, and the syntax is the full string as the first argument, and then the partial string that we're looking for as the second argument. And it returns the index in the string. But if it doesn't find anything, it'll be nil. So, what do we call it? Partial match? Yeah, sure. Partial match is string.find, and we're looking in the take name, and we're looking for string to search for. Okay. Now this will, if it finds it, this will be an integer value. If it doesn't find it, it will be nil. Maybe that's worth a comment. Using string.find, if it is found, it will return an integer. If there is no match, partial match will be nil. Okay, so what we can do then is if partial match, then, right? Because if this is nil, that's the same as it not existing. So when we do if partial match, then it's kind of checking to see if it exists or not. I.e., does partial match exist or not? That's kind of what we're doing with that if partial match then line. Cool. So if partial match does exist, then we do this, set the item to selected. That's the most basic thing that we do. All right, so let's give that a go. So this time we're going to search for just spawn. And there you go. It found partial matches for all of these. It didn't find any exact match, but it found partial matches for all of these. So that's very good. So this script isn't quite finished. We want to also do this stuff for the partial match. So the first one that it finds, we want to focus on that, but we want to keep selecting subsequent matches. Excuse me. Cool. So I think that will be part 2 of this video. So I'll see you then.